Hey, what's up, lightboltjoe here. Today we are going to discuss the 1908 book Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz. This is written by L. Frank Baum, illustrated by Denslow. I can never remember his name. Where is it? No, John Arneal. Denslow did the first book. John Arneal did the rest of the Oz books. This came out in 1908. This is the fourth book in the Oz collection, the Land of Oz books by L. Frank Baum. There's 14 in total. This was terrible compared to the other three. Yeah, so Dorothy is back from Australia, and she is meeting her second cousin, Zeb Hudson, and Jim, his cab horse, from the train station. She just came in from San Francisco. She's meeting him at another train station to get to Hudson's Ranch, because that's where Uncle Henry is, and then they'll all go back to, Kansas. So, because airplanes were not a thing then, so you had to travel by horse or automobile, depending on how wealthy you were, and then by boat to get from one continent to the next. So Dorothy's a world traveler, literally, at this point. So she survives a tornado. She survives a cyclone in the first book. In the third book, she survives a tsunami. In this fourth book, because she's not in the second book, she survives an earthquake. So as Zeb, Jim, the cab horse, Dorothy, and Dorothy's new cat, Eureka, the kitten from Australia, travel. They are sucked into the earth from an earthquake. They fall into this vegetable kingdom inhabited by these creatures called mangaboos. But this isn't America, right? But there's a fairyland now underneath America, as opposed to a fairyland being just its isolated island in the Pacific. So they're there and they're trying to defend themselves, and then all of a sudden the wizard shows up through this new crack in the earth with his balloon that's just descended. So then it's now the wizard reuniting with Dorothy, Zeb being introduced, Jim, and Eureka. So 5 characters. The wizard has 9 tiny piglets who he does magic tricks with. And so all of these characters go from the Mangaboo country to an invisible land where they fight these invisible bears under the earth. Right, they're going through a cave to get to one kingdom. They go up a mountain to get to another kingdom, the wooden kingdom of the gargoyles, and then they eventually have to meet these dragons, or the dragons are first, and then the gargoyles. I don't know. It was weirdly executed, but then the wizard has a sword at some point, which is fine. Then when they get to the gargoyle kingdom, he takes out these 2 pistols and he starts shooting like a madman at these wooden gargoyles, and I'm like, bro, why didn't you just use them when you were facing the invisible bears, because those are actual meat creatures, and the only way you knew you killed one is when you just swung your sword wildly and blood was just everywhere. This is weird, but okay. So at the end of the traveling, because it's been a few days of the traveling under the earth, Dorothy then says, hey, my friend Ozma has a magic belt and she can wish me to Oz, so maybe she can wish, or I'll wish all of you to Oz after I'm wished to Oz. So Dorothy gives her hand. It's not a handkerchief. She doesn't wave a handkerchief. It's now a hand symbol that she has to give. So it's changed a little bit. But Dorothy being called back to Oz because of the magic belt that was the Gnome King's, which Ozma now has, is a continuous plot point. So I was very happy to see that again. I didn't remember much of this book, but I remember that I didn't like this book. That's why I didn't remember much of it. So it's funny how certain things that you don't care for, you don't have a memory of until you read it again. And that's a prime example. Certain Oz books I could care less about because the plot is irrelevant. Certain are really great. So it's funny how memory works. So they're in Oz. Everybody's, having reconciles, and Eureka's put on trial because Ozma thinks that she ate one of the piglets that was gifted to her as a pet from the wizards. There's that. Jim and the sawhorse have a race, and then Jim gets mad that the sawhorse won, so he kicks the sawhorse, and then, the hungry tiger attacks Jim and, threatens him, as well as the cowardly lion. You got Tin Woodman, Nick Chopper's back, you got the Scarecrow, Jack Pumpkinhead, Wogglebug, H.M. Wogglebug T.E., TikTok is back. So, our characters are back, and it's great to see everybody. Delia Jam is there. And then, the wizard and Ozma have a conversation about how the people have missed the wizard as the ruler, but she is the rightful heir and she's the ruler. And then they're going over the history of how the Emerald City was created by the wizard. And I'm like, okay, but this was talked about in the first book, and then it was obliterated in the second book because it was revealed that the wizard, and we know this because of Glinda, because they were interrogating Mombi, the witch Mombi. Mombi was a witch who apparently ruled Oz at some point, as revealed in here, and she had imprisoned Ozma's grandfather as well as her father, but we know that, and the wizard gave Mombi little baby Ozma to hide away, and Ozma turned Ozma the girl into Tip the boy, hence all of that reveal at the end of the second book. In this book, it's shown that Ozma's grandfather and father were put in prison. No mention that the wizard stole Ozma away, but everybody knows that, but nobody talks about it. So it was very weird when she was like, yeah, and then you built the Emerald City, and all, but no, he didn't build the Emerald City because the Emerald City was there for her father Pastoria's rule. So it's like we're back to Baum is contradicting himself within the lore of the story. So it's hard to believe certain things. If we're even just taking the simple, at the end of the third book, Dorothy is supposed to wave a handkerchief, and then that's when Ozma would wish her back to Oz. But in this book, Dorothy's like, no, all I got to do is make a hand gesture. There's a difference between a hand gesture and waving a handkerchief, right? But then also just completely going back to the wizard did create the Emerald City, but he didn't because Pastoria ruled it. But then the wizard literally gives baby Ozma to Mombi to hide, and it's just not mentioned. So it's just retconned again. I don't like that. Keep the story fluid. Keep it accurate. So, I have issues now. Now that I'm genuinely paying attention to these books and plot points and character development, this was not a good book. Not a good book. We're not even in Oz until the last, third of the book. And then, it's little tiny things in the palace in the Emerald City, but, nothing, magical or, memorable. I'm only going to remember this because the plot doesn't make sense. The plot contradicts the story we've already been given. So, very interesting. Moving forward now. What's the fifth book? I got my stuff to the right. The next one is called The Road in Oz. No, The Road to Oz. So, will Dorothy go back to Oz? Who is traveling this road to Oz? Where is this road to Oz leading specifically? I don't remember, to be completely honest. We're going to read it. We're going to remember things. We're going to compare. So my little list-wise of favorite to least favorite so far between books 1 through 4. Marvelous Land of Oz, which is the second book. Ozma of Oz, which is the third book. Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which is the first book. And then Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz, which is the fourth book. On to the fifth. Mucho mahalo.